and I feel like I'm just repeating myself over and over again.
Well, I mean, you are. I'm Tom Dickinson.
And I'm Louis Midas.
And this is The Cloister Room,
a podcast about Doctor Who and other things.
Hey there, it's Tom Dickinson, and you're listening to The Cloister Room. The episode you're listening to was actually recorded on the 1st of November 2010. And yes, it is being released to the feed about a month and a half later. If you're curious as to why this is, our previous mini-episode might shed a little light on the situation. Suffice it to say that the episode you're currently listening to has lost a little bit of its topicality. For one thing, we talk about Sarah Jane Adventures, the death of the Doctor, and of course we do mention the regeneration limit. Not to mention our continuing discussion about Caprica, in which we talk about its cancellation, which at the time was fresh news. But while this episode has lost its timeliness, it has sort of gained a nostalgic feel to it. Just cast your mind back 6 or 7 weeks to the time when you too thought that it was worth discussing whether or not the regeneration limit was important. And of course, our discussion of Amy's choice in this episode was never meant to be timely or topical anyway, so it holds up about as well as you can expect. Just wanted to give you a brief heads up, because despite this podcast's signature style of abrupt, unannounced transitions from one topic to the other, we have no desire to confuse you. So just sit back, relax, and let lucky episode 13 of The Cloister Room wash right over you. Bon appetit! So yeah, Amy's choice.
Well, I remember that going in, we were talking about how you didn't really like it, and I kind of did like it. And so I was kind of looking at it I was actually looking at it from the perspective of your criticisms of it. And I guess we can go over those criticisms again, because I just happen to remember them. But I kind of like it a little bit less every time I watch it.
Yes!
I mean, I still like it as an episode. I think it's good. But it's not as good as I originally thought it was. I kind of feel that my opinion of this most recent series may be inflated. It might be a little bit... I think I may have enjoyed it a little bit more than I would have normally, just because we'd taken a year off, and I had just gotten into Doctor Who, so I was kind of like freaking out that, hey, it's taking a year off, I miss it, kind of a thing. So anyway, when it came back, and I was kind of just really excited, so I was just kind of eating everything up, and it was like really great, and I loved it. So the point is, and I know you've probably been waiting for me to get to the point, is that maybe I liked Amy's choice just because it was a Doctor Who episode, and not necessarily because it was a good Doctor Who episode.
So are you saying that I've not only ruined Amy's choice for you, but the entirety of Doctor Who Series 5? You are now casting doubt upon whether it was any good at all.
Well, yeah, in some sense I am doubting whether or not Series 5 was any good. But no, I do overall think that Series 5 was really good. And Amy's Choice, I'm going to stand by this, was a good episode. It just wasn't as good as I may have originally thought.
Okay. I feel like I need to restate some of my criticisms of the episode.
Yeah.
I also thought the episode was not on its own a bad episode. It's just that I expected more from it. And because I expected more from it, I was sort of embittered towards the episode, and that really stopped me from enjoying it very much. It all boils down to, I feel like they could have taken the idea a lot further in many ways. I feel like they didn't do as much as they could have.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They kind of fumbled a little bit. I feel like I felt like there could have been a real sense that they were waking up from a dream every time that they, quote unquote, woke up. And I didn't really get that sense. I kind of just felt like they were phasing in between two worlds, and I didn't really get the sense that they were dreaming at all. I think it's really hard to convey that sort of a thing. And I mean, I can't really offer any advice for, how they could have done it better or any suggestions for that. So I mean, I guess I'm just sort of, speculating wildly here that, they could have done it better. But I mean, I think that the situations themselves, perhaps they were asking for too much to expect us to think that it could have been a reality, that it was 5 years later and Amy was pregnant.
Well, honestly, I actually have to disagree there.
Okay.
This concept it's been done before. Lost did it. Lost did an episode where everything you thought you knew was thrown into doubt because one of the characters might just be hallucinating the whole thing.
True.
It was also done in Buffy. It was also done in Smallville, I think. The difference here is that I went into this episode completely willing to actually believe it.
Okay.
Because in the 11th hour, you have the concept of the Doctor going away, coming back, thinking he's just come back after a few moments, but it's actually been years. So I feel like it's entirely plausible that could have happened, and Stephen Moffat is just crazy enough to put something like that in the middle of the season where, okay, for the rest of the season, we have to deal with the fact that Amy and Rory are traveling with the Doctor now after having been away from him for 5 years. I feel like that's something I can actually envision Stephen Moffat doing that. I know he's not the writer of this episode, but he's the one who plans the season. So I can envision that that's a plan he has, and that's what this episode is sort of developing towards. But when you watch the episode, I don't think they went far enough to make it believable. So it was like, I was like, oh yeah, okay, so by the end of the episode, it's going to turn out that this was all a dream, and that the other worlds, the one where they're still in the TARDIS, is real. And it didn't turn out to be real. It turned out to also be a dream. But, I mean, the fact remains that at the end, the real world is a world where they're still in the TARDIS and none of that ever happened.
Right. I sort of thought, like, maybe it was sort of a misdirect, like it was intentional, that one world be obviously fake to blind you from the notion that maybe both are fake. So the one in the TARDIS with the cold star sort of seems more plausible. So I guess I wasn't really bothered by the fact that they did a poor job making that world seem real, or seem fake rather. Or no, wait, I had it right before. Long sentences. I should give up on compound sentences. But just going back, when you were talking about Stephen Moffat being just crazy enough to do it, are you suggesting that they would then switch over to Amy and Rory 5 years later in the TARDIS, like going back in the TARDIS and going on more adventures with pregnant Amy?
That's almost what I'm suggesting. I was actually more suggesting that Amy would give birth and then they'd be back in the TARDIS either with or without the baby. And then we'd have, I don't know what it is, like 5 or 6 more episodes through the rest of the season where we'd sort of have this refreshed take on these characters as we kind of had to come to meet them again, even though we'd already sort of gotten to know them.
That's interesting. Yeah, I suppose Stephen Moffat would have been crazy enough to do that.
I was a little spoiled ahead of time about this episode. Very early, I ended up reading something, like a one-sentence plot summary of the episode. I forget where it was from. It might even have been from Doctor Who magazine or the Radio Times. But it said, like, on the night before the birth of her first child, Amy remembers that 5 years ago she traveled with this man called the Doctor who has suddenly come back, which is a really dishonest summary of the premise of this episode.
Yeah.
But that's what I initially heard, and maybe at that point I got it stuck in my head that, oh, that's a really cool way to structure the season. That's kind of interesting. And that's why I was so willing to believe that, because I feel like that's something Doctor Who can do that a lot of other shows could not.
True. Yeah, wow, that is a really dishonest description. Like, that sounds really cool. Damn.
And that's it. I mean, I feel like there are so many... I feel like the outcome of the episode is the least interesting possible outcome of the episode.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, it's kind of like, oh, everything's back to normal now. It was all a dream. Although we do get this, like, nice little bit of sort of character development with Amy picking Rory, I guess.
Well, see, I disagree with that as well.
Okay.
I don't think there's any character development for Amy.
You don't?
She picks Rory at the end of Vampires of Venice.
Does she? I don't know. I dislike that episode, so I feel like I'm excused to block it out.
Oh, okay. And then here in this episode, she doesn't pick Rory over the Doctor. She picks Rory alive over Rory dead. I mean, because the Doctor's in both worlds. Again, here, I think another more interesting thing we could have done is have Rory dies in one world, the Doctor dies in another world, and then she has to choose which of those worlds is real. I feel like that's a more interesting place this episode could have gone, even if it would be perhaps a little dark for 6:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday. But if we had gone through that, I would have felt like, okay, they've moved Amy's character in an interesting direction. But I don't see that there is any progress from the end of Vampires is it Vampires in or of Venice?
I think it was of.
Okay, Vampires of Venice. There's no progress from there to the end of this episode, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think I understand where you're coming from, and I guess, once again, I don't really remember Vampires of Venice all that well, because I really haven't gone back and watched it again. But I'm willing to accept that I might be wrong, and maybe there is no character development there at all, because I am so very often wrong. Kind of gotten used to it. But just hopping back real quick to the idea of the Doctor dying in one world and Rory dying in the other, I don't see how that would work. And, I mean, I really like that idea, but I don't think that in the logic of the story and how it turned out, that I don't think that's possible, unfortunately.
Why do you mean that?
Well, because the Doctor was kind of in control, or his subconscious was kind of in control. And so, actually, no. In order to get out of both of those dreams, what they would have to have done is, like, assuming that Amy picked the world in which Rory was alive, then someone, not the Doctor, would have to figure out that they were both dreams.
Okay, I mean, but someone else could have figured that out.
That's true.
I mean, I think it would be kind of interesting if Amy or Rory was able to figure that out.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I agree with that, kind of. No, wait, I do agree with that.
Oh, okay. I feel like I now need to list a bunch of things about this episode that I really like. Because there are some things in this episode that I really do like.
Okay.
Well, I like Rory a lot. Mm-hmm. So, and Rory's kind of focused on in this episode, so I like that. Mm-hmm. I like the Dream Lord. I like everything about the Dream Lord.
Yeah, he's a pretty cool guy.
I don't know whether the Dream Lord is supposed to be the Valiard or not, but the Valiard being from Trial of a Time Lord, the sort of evil version of the Doctor from there. But I like evil old people monsters. I think that's really cool. I like the Peruvian folk band thing. And I like Matt Smith.
Yeah. I mean,
so
all right. It was, yeah. I mean, it was a very enjoyable episode.
I mean, I think I might have liked it a little bit more this time than before. Uh-huh. And I think the reasons for that is, well, I still think I'm right about my objections. I don't, it's not that I have softened on those points. I remain adamant. Uh-huh. But I've come to terms with them. I'm like, all right, this episode isn't the incredibly interesting thing it could have been. So my expectations on that front are lowered, and I'm able to enjoy the Matt Smith performance, enjoy the really cool things that they're able to do on a fairly low budget, and enjoy the Dream Lord character as a really great villain that he is. So, I mean, I'm able to put my objections aside and enjoy the ride of the episode. I think this is the first time on this podcast that I've been very critical.
Yeah. I think that's right, actually.
So
that's fun.
That is. I do really overall like Series 5, and I think it legitimately is incredibly good Doctor Who. So it may be that you are overhyping it, but I still like it as much in general now as I did then. But this episode, it is one that I will always sort of think of as not living up to its full potential. And it's one that kind of highlights the things that I don't like about Amy very much.
Yeah, and I mean, who knows how much of Amy's going to change now that she's, sort of got all her memory back, like of her parents and what have you, and all the things that had been previously sucked into the crack. So, I mean, I almost want to say that Amy's going to make more sense as a character now. I don't really know if that's true.
It may be, in which case I'm still kind of disappointed that they use that plot point as a crutch to write a character that doesn't make any sense.
That's true.
But I think I like Matt Smith enough for the both of them. And I also like Rory, so there's that.
Yeah, I do just always like watching the 11th Doctor. He really is my favorite. He's just so much fun. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I never get tired of watching him, and so, it was nice just to watch this episode again just because I really like the 11th Doctor.
Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of the 11th Doctor, did you watch the Sarah Jane Adventures? I forgot to ask you that.
I did, actually.
The whole 4th series up to this point, or just those two?
No, just those two.
What did you think of it? This being your first real encounter with the Sarah Jane Adventures, is it not?
Yes, I would define it as that, because previously the only thing I'd watched was the very first episode, and even at that, I think I only made it about halfway through before I was like, you know what? I should be doing other things. And I wasn't really sure of what to make of the Sarah Jane Adventures and wasn't even sure if I wanted to go back. In this particular case, I'm kind of glad I did. Once again, I do really like the 11th Doctor, so it was really fun to see him in this episode, or this pair of episodes. It did feel like it was geared towards a younger audience, and I realize that it is, but I was kind of able to get over that and sort of enjoy it as kind of a Doctor Who episode. And, you know, it was just fun to see the Doctor again, and, you know, it's been a while. It's been, you know, since July, so it was nice to see him again. On the whole, I enjoyed it, even if it did feel a bit like sort of little kidsy at times.
Like, I think I said to you before, yeah, you don't have to worry about continuity,
right?
Because there won't be much. But this episode was a little bit more than usual. It was sort of laden with references to previous stuff.
Right.
Like, particularly The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith, which was the episode last season that featured David Tennant.
Right, that was the other one I intended to watch. And back at that time, I was like, well, I want to watch it, but I'm going to watch all the other episodes of the Sarah Jane Adventures first. And then I just sort of could never really bring myself to watch all of the episodes of the Sarah Jane Adventures, so I never ended up watching the Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith. But I was able to infer that that's what was going on, so I didn't really feel like I was missing out.
Mm-hmm. They explain it pretty well.
Yeah, they do.
What you need to know.
Exactly.
I actually think that was a little bit better than this.
Oh, really?
In the grand ranking of Sarah Jane Adventures episodes. But I did enjoy this a lot. I don't think you've seen any episodes that featured Jo Grant, but I really liked seeing her come back. I liked seeing Matt Smith again, since it feels like it's been a lot longer than it actually has. He put in a great performance, and it was fun to watch. And in general, it was everything I expect from an episode of Sarah Jane, but having the Doctor in there was like a very, very nice added bonus. I feel like something we should mention is the number 507.
Oh, yes.
Now, had you heard about that prior to watching the episode?
I had.
As had I. It had been talked about a lot on the Twitter and whatnot.
Yes. I mean, I remember hearing somewhere or watching something, I forget, there was sort of, what was it? It was, I don't know, I forget. People link things, and I just watch them. You know, really, if you link anything, I'll watch it. But yeah, it was something about all the different episodes in which the whole 13 regenerations or 12 regenerations was established. And, you know, I don't know. I don't think that this is such a big deal. And I mean, it was kind of like a throwaway. I mean,
it's entirely possible he was just joking.
Yeah. And the thing is, you know, even if he is serious, if the show wants to go on, you know, past 13 incarnations of the Doctor, then, you know, obviously they're going to find some way to make it work. I mean, it's silly to think that you just, you know, okay, he used up his 13 incarnations. I guess we're done. We're done with production now. I mean, that's not gonna happen. So this is a problem they may have to seriously face at some point. So why not just make fun of that a little bit?
Yeah. Now, Russell T Davies, who wrote this episode, what he said is that he couldn't resist because he laughed the second he wrote it, and he said people are going to go crazy. Then he said the number 13 was only mentioned in one or two stories, which is not true.
Okay.
He said that, but it's really not true. And then he says, but this new number 507, it's never going to stick since 13 is so stuck in people's imaginations. Mm-hmm. I kind of hope that's true, because while it is true that if they stuck to 13, it would completely annihilate the possibility for any stories beyond maybe 6 or 7 years from now.
Right.
So they need to get around it somehow. Mm-hmm. But I also think there's possibly cool potential for a story there.
That's true. And I mean, I understand why Russell T would want to write that line, and, you know, I think it's kind of funny too. And, you know, if he wants to just troll people that way, that's fine with me. But the thing is, I think if it were done seriously, I think it's kind of silly, because why make it a bigger number? Let's just come up with an explanation for why that the number 13 should no longer be there. Let's not make it a bigger number, because that's just silly.
Well, I mean, saying the cap is 507 effectively eliminates the cap.
Yeah, but I feel like it's kind of silly.
And that is the point.
Right.
I'm surprised that people have been so upset about this.
I have a hard time thinking it's a big deal.
Yeah, I think we spent too much time on it already.
Yeah, probably. We don't want to give the impression we think it's a big deal.
That's the only thing that's a big deal. It's a big deal that it's not a big deal. It's pretty important to establish that. So I was about to say, so next week.
Yeah, wow, we're done. with all the doctors.
Although, I do think that we should at some point do the Peter Cushing Doctor.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I'm very curious to see it.
I'd like to do that in the not-too-distant future.
Yes.
And I think at some vague point in the future, we were also going to do the remainder of Big Finish 8th Doctor Adventures Series 1.
Right.
But, so, we have things to do. We have a lot
Indeed.
to talk about. and then we'll probably just cherry-pick Doctor Who stories at random.
Yeah, and that's a good way to go, I think.
Not that I'm saying that we should actually strictly do them at random.
Well, no. There'll be a system. It'll be very advanced.
Yes.
Lots of algorithms
And doing what we feel like.
that is the most complicated algorithm of all.
Exactly. Scientists have yet to unravel our whims.
Yes, exactly.
Scientists listen to this podcast trying to figure out what's going on, and they just can't. Hey there, listener. It's me again, Tom, one of the hosts of the Cloister Room. You know, the podcast you're listening to. Remember when I said that this whole episode was recorded on November 1st? Well, I kinda stretched the truth a little bit. But what I told you was true, from a certain point of view. Listener, you're going to find that a great many of the truths we cling to in life depend greatly on our own point of view. In any case, Lewis and I actually had 2 discussions about the Battlestar Galactica franchise. One before the announcement of Caprica's cancellation, and one after. Now, as the editor of this podcast, I've done my best to present this material in the least confusingly redundant way possible. And let me tell you, it was friggin' hard. So I just wanted to give you another heads up. And don't worry, you'll be able to tell where one of those discussions ends and the other begins. And just in case you have any trouble, I will be signaling it with the usual sound effect, which sounds a little like this. We talked a little bit about it on a previous episode, that there would be a possible web series based during the Cylon War following a young man, Bill Adama.
Right, I remember that now.
That idea has been expanded, and now it's going to be like a full series.
Oh, cool.
Or rather, it's going to be a TV movie pilot with the option to go to series, which is how both Battlestar and Caprica started. So it's called Battlestar: Blood and Crow.
That sounds terrible.
It actually sounds way too similar to the Star's Spartacus: Blood and Sand.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, it seems like a deliberate ripoff of that.
Yeah, I guess if it were a deliberate ripoff, that would make it a little bit better, but still, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
As a fan of Battlestar, I would watch it anyway, and I probably will watch it, but still, that's such a bad title.
The thing about it that appeals to me is that it's going to primarily have as its villains the old-fashioned Cylons.
Whoa! I guess it makes sense, actually.
That's sort of inevitable, isn't it? Because prior to the events of Battlestar Galactica, no one knew about the humanoid Cylons.
That's true. Yeah. I'm not going to go into much detail because I don't think it's terribly interesting for people who aren't Battlestar fans, and people who are Battlestar fans already know this stuff. But yeah, the Cylons looking like humans thing happened much later.
I think the Cylons looking like humans is a major part of what makes Battlestar Galactica work to the extent that it does, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, it allows for some more interesting drama in terms of heroes and villains, and are the villains really all bad, or do they have some sort of higher purpose? Whereas if you're just fighting these evil robots that want to destroy everybody, and that's all they are. I mean, not that the humanoid Cylons aren't evil robots who want to destroy anybody. Right. But they're like evil robots who want to destroy everybody with a human face.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot more I think you can do with that.
It's a different sort of appeal. Mm-hmm. I think maybe these giant hulking metal robots will make for a very different sort of adversary.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that it'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll have a much different sort of dynamic, if you will, in this Blood and Chrome thingy, as opposed to like in the reimagined series. But yeah, I think it probably will still sort of kind of work, I guess. So have they chosen to do this based upon reaction to like Caprica, or do they just think that because people love Battlestar so much, they're just going to try and generate as many franchise or as many spin-offs as they can?
I don't know. I mean, that's what people are kind of wondering. I mean, Doctor Who has 2 spin-offs, so... Well, 3 if you count the K9 animated series.
I don't think we should. But...
Okay, well then let's not. It could be that this is some sort of replacement for Caprica.
Yeah.
That's what some people are wondering.
I could see that.
Because Caprica has not been officially pronounced dead or or renewed for the next season. So no one really knows where that's going.
Has it been doing okay in the ratings and stuff?
I haven't been paying too close attention to it, but I've been getting the impression that it has not been doing good enough for people to be confident that it will be renewed.
Ah, I see.
So I don't know if it's up against anything quite as bad as Swamp Bloggers in terms of competition. It could be that this is something that they're hoping to pair with Caprica on like maybe a single night, and then you'll have two shows that have two very different sort of forks off of the Battlestar mothership. Caprica, which is broody and complex and stuff like that, and this new Blood and Chrome show, which will probably be more of a straightforward war story kind of thing.
Yeah, I could see I think that might work really well.
And what the listener has just heard is our discussion last week, in which we talked about the new Battlestar spinoff, Blood and Chrome, and its possible relationship to Caprica should Caprica continue to exist. Which we have recently learned that it will not.
Yeah.
I say we have recently learned, as though you heard it first on the Cloister Room. When by the time this podcast is out, it will be common knowledge.
True.
So, have you caught up on Caprica?
No, I haven't. I watched the first episode, I guess, when it came back, but I haven't really watched any since. I do think they are somewhere on my computer, but I haven't watched them.
If they're somewhere on your computer but you don't know where they are, you should don these glasses and wander around the city inside your computer for several weeks moaning, "My Caprica episodes! I can't find them!" And then do drugs through your eyes.
That sounds brilliant.
I actually did catch up on it. I thought, it's time I caught up on Caprica. And, literally the day I had already caught up, I found out that it had been canceled and they weren't even going to be airing the rest of the series until sometime next year.
Wow. Do you feel responsible? Like Sci-Fi was tracking your behavior and they're like, oh, nope, Tom Dickinson's all caught up. We better stop it now.
I kind of think the series was doomed no matter what I did. So I'm not going to feel too bad about that.
All right.
We've talked a lot about Caprica in the past.
We have.
So I don't feel it's necessary to reiterate how we feel about the show in general.
Right.
But do you intend, now that you know that it has a very brief lifespan, do you intend to continue watching it? Do you think you're going to finish it?
Oh yeah, and I think that even though I don't really want it to, I think for me, Caprica is going to be the new Firefly. I'm going to say it's canceled before its time, and I'm going to stick to that.
Caprica's nowhere near as good as Firefly.
I never said my opinion was a good one.
Okay.
No, I don't think it's Firefly. But no, I do feel like I would have liked to have seen more Caprica, and I say that even having not caught up. I'm kind of upset that they canned it. And I mean, I understand why they did, so I'm not incredibly disappointed. But I would have liked to have seen where it was going. I guess I say that about all TV shows, though. All TV shows that were canceled in their first season.
Did you happen to read the announcement of its cancellation?
No, I didn't.
It was really amusingly passive-aggressive.
Oh, really?
It was despite its obvious quality, Caprica has never found the audience. I mean, usually channels don't announce that a show has been canceled.
Right.
You just wait for next season's schedule, and it's not on the schedule, and then maybe someone will ask someone at the network, and they'll be like, yeah, we didn't think it was the right fit. But no, they just came out and said, Caprica's gone, we're pulling it from our schedule, it's canceled. I mean, usually in this situation where they're pulling it from the schedule, you might expect them to say, we're evaluating options. But yeah, it was intense.
Wow. I don't entirely remember our conversation, and, to our listeners, this is going to appear as though I have some sort of short-term memory loss, but I can't remember if we were discussing whether or not that Caprica and the new Blood and Chrome terribly named spin-off would be airing at the same time, or, be on television in the same sort of general...
block.
Right. But that'll never happen now, which is sad.
I thought it was kind of interesting because they sort of take two different aspects of Battlestar Galactica, the moody philosophical aspect and the action-y robot fighting aspect, and spin them off and completely isolate them from one another.
Those would have complemented each other, and I think we may have even mentioned that.
Right, but now the fact that Caprica is gone, it seems to mean that Sci-Fi feels like that is the wrong aspect to be spinning off, whereas the right aspect is the gritty war robot fight aspect.
Right.
I mean, I keep saying this as though I assume that there's not going to be any sort of complex, dramatic, philosophical element to it, which is an assumption I'm making, right. And it could be wrong. Mm-hmm. And if it's gone, I will miss it. But I think it still has the potential to be a very enjoyable show.
Well, that's going to be interesting, because I guess I feel a little bit more pessimistic now, knowing that... And I mean, I understand this is going to be a completely different show, but I mean, they canceled one Battlestar spinoff, so I don't have high hopes for any other Battlestar spinoffs, even though I know that this one's going to be totally different.
Well, I virtually guarantee that this one will be far more popular.
That's true.
Do you know what they were hoping for with Caprica?
No, I don't.
They were hoping that Caprica would reach a broader audience than Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, right.
Because they were hoping that the fact that it has more dramatic elements would make people who aren't inclined to watch sci-fi want to watch this show. That could not be any wronger than it is.
Yeah.
Caprica is, in terms of like what it is as a show, it's puzzling, especially to someone who doesn't watch sci-fi. I think a non-sci-fi person would be more inclined to watch Battlestar Galactica, which is set on a spaceship and has robots, because they can easily understand, okay, this is some kind of robot space thing. All right, I'm not that into sci-fi, but I'm flipping channels, might as well give this a shot.
Right.
Whereas they'll see Caprica and they'll be, what the hell am I watching?
That's true, because there is sort of more drama, but the sci-fi stuff that is actually present in the show is a lot more complicated, because Caprica itself was a very advanced civilization at its height. And so the original Battlestar, you know, it was, yeah, like you said, it was very simple, and, you know, you could wrap your mind around the idea that it's happening on a spaceship and that there's robots, but it's really hard to wrap your mind around a virtual world and stuff like that. Well, I mean, not really. I mean, we do have The Matrix, and The Matrix is like, what, 10 years old or something. But, you know, a lot of the elements in Caprica are really, like you said, confusing and, you know, strange for sci-fi.
You know what I can't wrap my mind around?
What?
Okay, sometimes with a show like Dollhouse, Fox thought they had a good idea of what they were getting with Dollhouse, and then they started making the show. And then as it was being made, they sort of realized that they had creative differences and that the show wasn't exactly what they were looking for. And that's when problems sort of started to arise. But with Caprica, they made that pilot movie, saw 90 minutes of the show, and still thought that it was going to appeal to a broad audience.
Yeah, that's kind of strange of them.
They're dummies. Big dumb dummies. I act like I'm saying they shouldn't have picked up the show, and I have, as I've said before, enjoyed the show. So I just think that they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's been so long since I've seen the pilot, I don't really know what was all in it, but I feel like, I want to say that it had no, I guess it really was about the same as the actual show. So, yeah, sci-fi is just stupid.
That about wraps it up for this episode of The Cloister Room, which you have been listening to and soon shall no longer be. You can find this episode and more like it at thecloisterroom.com, where you can leave a comment for us on one of our blog posts, preferably the most recent one, because that's the one I'm most likely to check. Tell us how you like the show, if you don't like the show, if you think we're wrong about something we said, if you think we're right about something we said, if you don't listen to the show but have something to say anyway. Which, I mean, you wouldn't be hearing this message. Give us an email at thecloisterroom@gmail.com, or perhaps follow us on Twitter at thecloisterroom, or you can follow me personally on Twitter at tdickinson.
Or you can follow me on Twitter at milesbelly.
Yes, please do. Following us on Twitter is just about the only way you have to keep getting a constant stream of us while we're not doing a podcast.
And really, like, I almost don't endorse following me, because I don't talk about Doctor Who related stuff anywhere but here.
Really?
Well, no, that's not true. I guess I talk about it sometimes on Twitter, but it's very few and far between. So unless you really just want to listen to the inner workings of my mind, or just, you know, the daily routine of my life, probably you don't want to follow me. But maybe I'm just trying to use reverse psychology here.
I think it's kind of obvious, because in previous episodes you've essentially begged people to follow you.
I have. Darn.
Yeah, you've been like, please follow me.
You've seen past my ploy.
I've said everything. I've said all of the ways you can find us. And like we already said earlier in the podcast, we're going to be putting the podcast on hold for about a month while we work on our novels and do other things.
Yeah.
Okay, so until next month. I almost said week again. Darn it. Until next month. I've been Tom Dickinson.
I've been Lewis Midas.
And goodbye.
Good luck. And good night.
Fail. Okay, yeah. I was going to say something clever there, but it didn't happen.
That's a summary of my life, really.
It's a summary of this podcast. I feel like we should get rid of the tagline, a podcast about Doctor Who and other things, and adopt the new tagline. I was going to say something clever there, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
That's our new tagline.
It would be more honest. So yeah, and also, if you want to sort of offload some of the editing to me, I'd be willing to give that a try.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something to the listeners.
No, well, if the listeners want to give me some editing to do, I can do that too.
You know, you'll edit manuscripts, edit videos.
Yeah, there's nothing I won't edit, except nothing naughty. I don't want that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, keep it PG.
Oh, see, I thought that was another ploy.
No.
No? Okay.
Or is it? I don't know anymore.